Hi, Gummies. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Bumping My Gums. We have yet another awesome guest with us today. Please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. Hi, Gummies. My name is Taria Pritchett, and by day, I'm a high school English teacher, and by night and weekends, I am a confidence coach for women. I'm a speaker, and I'm also an author, and I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Yes, we're so excited for you to be here. I know that you were on TED Talk. Well, actually, you've been on quite a few things. You were spotlighted on the Q Show, right? You were
Mhm.
did a TED Talk Wilmington, and then
Mhm.
you've also been some guest spots on some other shows and things of that nature. But the thing that I wanted to ask you about is the TED Talk.
Okay.
How did that come about?
So I love vision boards. So about 5 years ago, I believe, I had put Ted on my vision board. And I had heard on a Beyonce song, she had like a clip from a TED talk in the beginning. And I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Like, that could be me one day. So I put it down, but I didn't really fully explore it. And then I think in 2016, I went to a TED Talk interest meeting that was locally being held. And I was like, okay, I could do this. And then my mom's friend did a TED Talk. And I was like, oh, I really can do this. And then one of my students did a TED Talk. And I was like, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. However, when I went to do it at the time, I was about to publish my book, and I was like, this is way too much for me to do at once. So I waited a whole year, and then I decided to apply to our local TEDx Wilmington. And I didn't hear back from them. So I was like, how did I like how's that gonna work? But then I saw my coworker, she got a call back. And then my other friend that's the teacher, he got a call back. So I was just like, okay. So I reached out to them and I was like, well, like, is that the end all be all? Like, how does this process really work? So they really get about 300 applications that come in and they sort through because each TED Talk is themed. So I put in for education, but they selected me for a different theme. So it all worked out in the end. A couple weeks after, they emailed and asked me would I be available on a specific date in April, and I said, of course. And from there, you sign a contract, and then you have to go through this process in order to actually step on stage and give your TED talk. So that's how that came
That's
about.
awesome. So it was called, let's see, The Magic in Empowering Black Girls. I like
Yes.
that. What spoke to me most, and the reason why I called out the TED Talk is because
Okay.
what I enjoyed most is listening to how, when you were younger, how your mother noticed different characteristics or different interests in you, and she fed those to
Yes.
mold you. And then as you got older, now you're, well, not as you got older, but as
Mm-hmm.
walked in that gift, now you're doing the
Mm-hmm.
same thing for other little girls. So I thought that that was
Yes,
pretty
that's what I
awesome.
love.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was pretty
Mm-hmm.
awesome that that she encouraged you, and you said that you were 13 years old, started a book club, and you felt like a nerd. But I appreciated the fact that your mom allowed you to be you. Like, she didn't say, "Oh, you sure you want to do that? Maybe you should, do this, or maybe you should do that. This will be
Mm-hmm.
more popular," or something like that. But no, she noticed that you had something in you, and she nourished that. So that's what really, really spoke out to me about the TikTok.
I love that. Thank
So,
you.
yeah, absolutely. So, when you are mentoring these little girls, do you
Mm-hmm.
find that that's one of the challenges where they do have certain gifts or certain visions, but they have family members or something like that that tries to say, "Oh, well, yeah, you write a okay story, but your grammar isn't that great. Maybe you should focus on science," or something like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you walk through that and continue to encourage them?
So that is an issue that comes up. But actually, the bigger issue is that most people's parents and guardians don't even realize they have the gifts, to be honest. Or they may see it as, I don't want to say a deficit, but they might see it as a negative, right? So if Tatiana's always talking in class, she's always getting in trouble when someone's, calling home about that. Her gift could really be speaking or connecting people, but oftentimes that's like annoying to a teacher, or that's annoying at home because she always talking. So they don't realize that Tatiana can grow up and be like an international world renowned speaker. So I think sometimes people don't even like connect the dots together. So that's something that when I mentor girls, and I have a mentoring program at my high school that I've had for 8 years. So I have learned a lot from that process, from working with them. But I have to empower them to be able to figure out their own gifts and how they can walk in it and hone it, and also get other mentors, because their family members are always the best and seeing those gifts and cultivating. And if I notice it, obviously, I try to cultivate it or connect them to a resource or a mentor that can support them in developing whatever it is that they have, because oftentimes they don't really believe in themselves. I mean, as adults, we don't normally, but as a young girl, that's one of the bigger issues, is that we don't even believe enough in our gift to really walk in it.
Yeah. And that is so true. A lot of times we do struggle with the "are we good enough?"
Yes,
You know,
that is the number one challenge for girls and for women. And as a confidence coach, that is hands down the number one struggle that women or girls come to me with on a daily basis.
wow.
We all deal with it.
So it's the biggest challenge, but how do you
Mm-hmm.
help them overcome it?
Oh, that's a big question. That's a big that's a big question. So how do I help them to overcome it? So I simply take them through what I call like an inner healing process. So it really means that we have to go back and uncover where those beliefs started at. And normally those beliefs start when we are little girls. And I take them back to, where do you remember, like, were you bullied? Was it someone in your home who said something? Was it your dad? Was it your mom? Was it your cousin? Was she jealous of you? Were you comparing yourself to your siblings as you're growing up? So we really go back to uncover, and then I have to help women recover from the process. Once those things start to come up and really shift in the story, we really come up with these stories in our mind that we tell ourselves, that I'm not good enough, I'm not light enough, my hair is not good enough, I'm not qualified enough. So I will have people with a PhD that will literally come to me and say, Tara, I don't feel like I'm qualified enough to start a business. And I'm like, what? Like, you have been, yes, right? Like, you have been studying this thing for like 20 years. But it goes back to that belief. Is, I don't feel like I'm worthy. I don't feel like I'm deserving. Even before I got on here, I somebody that's in my Facebook group won a prize for free, and she didn't even feel comfortable. She didn't even feel comfortable asking me to send it to her. And I'm like, but you want it and it's for free. It's a belief. I know, doesn't it sound crazy? Yeah. It is a belief that we have, and we carry it. So I have to help people uncover, then recover. once all, because the stuff will come to the surface, and it can be very emotional once you start to realize, like, that's where that came from. And then after that, I help them discover, where are they going? Like, who's the woman that's trying to emerge, and what is triggering you to want to heal these things and evolve and grow to the next level. So it's a process.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, right, it's helping them uncover, recover, and then discover, like, who you're going to become. Now that all the stuff has come up, that doesn't mean you're flawed. That just means you got to integrate all the pieces together, and that's how you become more whole and complete.
So let's talk a little bit about your background, because it sounds like not only, are you doing coaching, but there might be a little bit of counseling in there when you're trying to, assist the adults and assist kids on how to overcome that fear and, dig deeper to find out where it came. So let's talk about your background.
So I'm actually not formally trained as a coach, and I recently just started a counseling program through Wilmington University, so that I can become a certified mental health professional. But I honestly, as I'm going through all of the coursework, a lot of the stuff that they're sharing, I already do. It's practices that I've developed over time because I also invest in my own coaches. So I've, flown to Orlando and like worked under people and learned from them and went through, you know, the workbooks and the processes and the systems and all of that kind of stuff. So normally what I draw from is a lot of experience that I've had and a lot of education that I've had that's more so been, I guess, self-taught, I guess is what you would say. But I find that I wanted to strengthen the techniques and practices that I use. So I decided to go back to school so that I can also generate a local, I guess, cohort of people that I can connect with that are also on that same wave as me. And because right now I'm really, I guess, entrenched in the education community, and I know a lot of those people. I know everybody, but I don't know the other side. So, and as I'm reading through, I was like, oh, they had a whole section on like counseling and coaching and how it's like very, very connected. Because at first I was like, is this going to connect together? But it really does. It really does connect together. And I also still want to go through. One of my own coaches has a worthiness, actually, that's like her specialty, has a worthiness certification program. So that's also something I also want to go through in the next couple of months. So my hope is just to continue to grow and learn so that I can provide the best practices to the people I work with.
So what inspired you? When did you realize, okay, now it's time for me to start coaching?
So that's a good question. So I started out blogging and I thought about coaching once a lot of people started commenting. And I'm like, okay, well, they need more, like they need something deeper. Like they might be like, oh my God, my confidence is blah, blah, blah. Or I still feel blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. So that means that there's something that needs to go a little bit deeper. So I didn't really necessarily think of it as coaching. I instead thought, what can I do or create to make that process for them easier or like break things down better? So I created my first online course and then put that up and then nobody bought it. And I was like, oh, okay. So this is the how, if you build it, they're going to come, they're not. So, so that's what made me actually look for my first mentor or coach. So that was like, I guess, a professional mentor. So that was a business coach. And I made a really large investment and I was terrified. But I made that investment. It was over $3,000. And I was like, okay, is this what you're going to do? And it was a year-long program, but she literally walked me through. So I was able to see why nobody bought. I was like, okay, now I see why nobody bought anything. Because there's a process that you have to take people through. There's a way that you attract people to you. And from there is when I decided, okay, I think that I want to actually kind of build a brand out of this. And I want to add this other element. So that's where the coaching part came in. And then in addition to that, I had to learn all of the entrepreneurial things that I didn't know because, again, I was trained as a teacher. And being a teacher and selling to people, it's not that different, honestly, but it is slightly different. It's really not now that I know what they both are. But they seem really different at first.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that you mentioned that because sometimes when people are looking at, your journey, sometimes they only see the success side of your journey. So is
all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good to hear that, there was some steps that you had to go through in order to get to where you are today. Yeah. So from the first time you offered your seminar and no one purchased, how long did it take, or how long did you meet with your coach before you started seeing a change and you were?
That's a good question. I don't even know. So the crazy part is that yesterday, I had looked in the bottom of my drawer next to my bed, and I found my old journal from 2014, and I guess I had wrote out about that new course. I was like, what's the chances of, I was like, this is going to come in handy. I guess it's coming handy now. Yeah. So I was trying to figure out, so I'm real big on journaling. So I journal everything. So I can look back and see, well, what was I thinking and all that. Then I know that's a lot.
That's good though.
So I don't remember how long it took, but I do know that that program I invested in, that's why it was $3,500, was that it was a year-long program.
Mhm.
So I just started out going through her process over the course of the year. I probably would have made a sale probably within, I'm probably thinking within that first year, but I don't remember. I would have to go back and look through.
Mhm.
But I'm pretty sure that I was able to start making movement. I know I started getting on the phone with different women, and did what what she taught me, which was market research, and I started to like actually hear what people actually wanted versus me. When I created that, I just made what I thought that women wanted, and it is what women wanted, but I wasn't using the proper language. I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know anything about branding, selling. I didn't know any of that.
Mhm.
I was just having a good time. Like,
Right.
oh, I'm gonna blog for y'all. I'm gonna blog everything I know. But what I learned was to be more strategic. So I think by the time we hit 2015, and definitely by 2016, I ended up rebranding everything. I switched from being a blogger to being a coach officially. I changed my website. I changed everything. So I know by 2016, so that would have been what, like 2 years.
Yeah.
I really start getting in the groove and like making stuff and making sales and making a bigger impact. So I guess within at least 2 years, I really start like kicking it up.
Okay.
But
So you
took me
mentioned that you were an author. Your book is called Born Fierce: How to Unleash the Confident Woman Within. When did you know it was time to actually, is that right?
yeah, no, that's right.
How did you know?
So when did I know it was time? So honestly, since I was a nerd back in what, seventh grade, I wanted to write a book then. So my mom realized that I liked reading, but also I really love writing too. So I always wanted to write a book. I had always written down ideas about what I wanted to do. My mom even bought me like how to be like a child author, and
Oh, wow.
I guess it just never worked out. Okay. So, so I decided a couple years ago that it was time, because when I started getting on the phone with women, I realized everybody's saying the same thing. I'm unworthy. I'm like, all right, y'all. So I was like, let me put it all together. So the beauty of me starting out as a blogger is that I have all of these blog posts.
Mm.
So I was able to take a number of them and synthesize through those and create a cohesive, flowing document that would later become Born Fierce: How to Unleash the Confident Woman Within. So, and I love the idea of having something in your hand and then something that you can give out to people. I know that's how I am. I like a physical book. I like, touching and highlighting all that.
Yeah.
But y'all know I'm an English teacher, so I like books. So I wanted to also have a bigger impact.
Yeah.
So I thought that would be awesome. And what if I could impact a girl in Africa, which I have now. A couple of them actually, guys and girls, to be honest. So yeah, hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah.
I can go on and on. But yeah, so I realized I wanted to make a bigger impact. And I'm like, it's finally time for me to put this book together and put something out.
So when you were going through your old vlogs and gathering the data,
Mm-hmm.
gathering your information to decide which topics would go inside your book, did you find that it would, when you were writing the book, did you find that it was therapeutic for you to kind of to relive some of that information?
So I think that it was therapeutic for me to go through it. And I even see that I have like multiple versions of it. And not only did I write the book, I decided I wanted to make a whole experience out of it. So I also made an online program with it. I also, which I have right here, made a like
Workbook.
a little workbook, right, which is free for people who get the book and download it. So that was fun because I got to incorporate the things that I love as a teacher. I like handouts and creating and all that kind of stuff, so I get to bring it all together. And for those women that really connect with me, they also love that experience, so it really helps them unpack all of the stuff that holds them back or that makes them feel unworthy in the process. So it was fun for me, even though it was a lot of work, but it was also therapeutic and fun for me as
Awesome.
well.
So I know that you had, I think it was last year, you had a book signing at Barnes and Noble. But what I thought
Uh-huh.
was really awesome is you did it the first time, but then when you did it again, you
Mm-hmm.
asked for other authors to come along with you. So you weren't
Right.
about just promoting your book, but you were about empowering other ladies and encouraging them to come out and do
Mm-hmm.
that as well. So how did that come about?
So that's a really good question. So last year I went to the mall and there's a, they have Barnes and Noble, and I saw a poster and I saw somebody that I know, she wrote a children's book, and I saw that she was on a book sign, and I was like, okay, so we can, I guess we all can do book signings. That I didn't know that. I didn't know that was even a thing, because I feel like when you think about Barnes and Noble, you're thinking like, you got to be J.K. Rowling or
Right.
Toni Morris. Like, you can't just roll up to Barnes and Noble. So anyway, I took it upon myself, per usual, my usual, and I emailed them and I asked them, well, what opportunities do you have for local authors? Because if somebody I know is there, then obviously there's a chance that anybody can come in to an extent. And they responded to my surprise and said, "Oh, we have local author spotlights all the time." Oh, you do, but it's not advertised. It's not advertised anywhere, so you don't know if you don't ask. So they said, we're booked for the remainder of 2019. Our next spot is January 2020. Okay, sign me up. So I signed up for that. And on the day that we were had to have the book signing, there was 5 authors. Only 3 showed up because it kind of snowed a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So they said they couldn't make it in. Works for me. Because it was such a smaller audience, and because I did such a good job of marketing and letting people know I was there, I ended up generating the most traffic and the most sales. People was like, well, who is that? Because why are all these people coming to her table?
Right.
And then the other 2 authors, so I was like seated here, and then the other 2 authors were like here and here. And they like barely got any traffic. One of them even left earlier, like, oh, it was nice to meet you.
Right.
Because they didn't really market it, right? So Barnes and Noble really lets you do whatever you want. But people don't know that though. But now I know. So because of that, I decided to leverage that, and I thought, you know what? How can we do this again? So my mom, at her school where she works at, they have a partnership with Barnes and Noble where I guess they get their books from them. So she always talks to the manager. So she was like, well, I know the manager so well because she always delivers our books. And I was like, okay. So I asked her for the contact information. I decided to pitch I guess my own local. I'm like, well, what if we had this, but it was like all African American?
Right.
Because ain't nobody do that. So I decided to pitch it to her, and I said, we could do Women's History Month, we can do Black History, and she was like, oh, we can do Black History, get it to me, boom, boom, boom. So it went really, really quick.
Wow.
So I did all the work. Barnes and Noble, they did a little something, something, but I got the authors together. I created the application. I had to rent tables to get into their new space. They made custom drinks for us at their cafe. They allowed me to incorporate a fundraiser for the girls that I mentor. So it turned out to be an amazing event, and it was
Right.
excellent. And I don't think they've seen that many people of color, honestly. And this was at a different location than the one I originally did it at.
Mm-hmm.
But they needed that level of diversity. So it really worked out for everybody because it was really like booming. And they said on Sundays, normally it's like a couple people, but I like got all these people to come out in addition to the other authors. That was part of their task.
Yeah.
It's for us to promote and really make this a big deal, which I think that we succeeded at. So that's how that came about. My hope is possibly to do one again. Obviously, with what's happening now, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
But that will be our hope. And they said because it was so successful, they would love to have something else possibly in the fall. So we'll see
Okay.
how that goes.
That's awesome. So how did you select the authors to be with you that day?
So how did I? So it really was based on the applications that they submitted. Once I saw how many people submitted, I was like, I'm going to try to have all of them, which was a stretch. It's also the biggest one they've ever had. They normally don't have that many authors. And that's part of the reason why I had to rent tables, because they were like, well, what's going to happen to our tables in our cafe? How are people going to, sip on a latte and then have the book? So we had to compromise. But I really only turned down maybe 1 or 2 people, and that's just because their application was maybe unprofessional. Like somebody sent in a picture of them just like hanging in the car, more. And I was like, why did you submit this? So I just didn't accept them because I was like, I don't think that's going to fit into what we're doing. So for the most part, almost everybody that submitted, super professional, clear with their bio, their photo, all their information about their business or their brand in their book. It was super clear. And I was like, we can make this work.
Okay.
So pretty much almost everybody but I think the next time I do it, I am going to have to be a lot more selective because so many people email me after asking could they participate. So they're going to want to, participate in the future.
So what's your favorite book? You say you like to read. What's your favorite book?
So my favorite book, and my students are like, you're so hyped for this. I am. So I guess I kind of have two. My favorite book is Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. I'm sure you've heard of it. Not sure if you read it. At first, it could be hard to get into because Zora utilizes the dialect from the South in the 1930s. And our main character, Janie, she talks. The English is broken. She is a descendant of slaves, so she never goes to school. She kind of works at where she, on a little farm, whatever. But then also Zora does an excellent job of blending in her. Like she's so powerful and eloquent with her own natural word choice because she was highly educated. But she blends the two worlds together. So my students always hate me. We first start because they're like, okay, why are we reading this little illiterate girl? First of all, but
in the English class,
to teach them about African American English, which they're like, wait, that's a thing. Yes, it is a thing. Yeah, let's learn about that. So yeah, that's my favorite book because ultimately the themes are about self-love, about healing, about confidence, about overcoming generational cycles and issues. So our main character ends up in three marriages. I'm not even gonna say relationships. She goes on this journey, and her grandmother promotes her to go and get married to this older guy, which is a lot. She looking like exactly. And then she leaves him, runs away, goes with this other guy. I know it's a lot, right? And he's the mayor. He's the mayor of Eatonville, Florida. And Eatonville is one of the first African American owned and operated towns that was independent, on its own, which is really cool. You could actually research it, look it up. They throw a Zora Neale Hurston festival every year. Maybe I'll go one day. She goes with him, and he's abusive, and he just thinks he's the man of the town. And she's just like, well, okay, grandma. So her grandma ends up passing away. She decides, I'm probably not supposed to be telling y'all the whole book. You probably wasn't even asking me all this. So her grandma ended up passing away, and she wanted her to get married off because she didn't really have a family. Because grandma was a former slave, and you gotta read the book to know all the rest. But anyway, grandma thinks that if I marry her off, she'll have a stable home. But the character, she never learns to love herself. She never gets to have the freedom to truly be herself. So guess what? When that husband number 2 dies, girlfriend is excited, which is weird because she finally feels free. And then she meets her next boo. And in the movie version, her last boo is Michael Ealy. So you can imagine the first 2, they ain't that cute.
Right.
Third boo is Michael Ealy, and his name is Tea Cake. Okay. And he's charismatic, smooth, all that. They get together. It's like, oh my God, it's amazing. And then something happened with them too. So ultimately, by the time you get to the end, you realize the journey was really about self-discovery. It really was about confidence. It really was about loving yourself aside from those relationships. But that's what she was taught. And grandma taught her that because grandma was a slave. So she had a certain mentality about life. But I just feel like it's so relevant for today. I tell my clients to read it, and they're like, girl, we ain't reading no book. Yes, you are. Just because once you actually read it and get it, it's so profound. And then Zora wrote it in 7 weeks after she had a bootleg breakup. And so to read it after, she wrote that in 7 weeks, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. If you don't want to read it, Oprah loved it as well. So she made the movie version, which is not as good as the book, but it's free on YouTube, and you can watch it for 2 hours and see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I watched the TV version. I didn't read the book, but now I may have to. I may have like a zillion credits in Audible that I need to use. So maybe I'll use one of my
Yeah.
credits to actually get a book version. And I probably watched it when it first came out, so I didn't really remember a lot of it. But it's really funny about the whole generational curses and
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature, because the most recent thing that comes to my mind is Niecy Nash talking about her divorce,
Yes.
about how basically generational curses could have kept her in a relationship that she knew was over, and it was just,
Yes.
oh, you know what I mean? It was just all about,
That's a good
well,
one.
he's a good man, he looks good, he treats you right, like why leave? But if you don't have that inner peace, or if you're not happy, it's like you gotta let it go. You gotta be able to walk away and save
Totally
yourself.
agree.
Yeah. So that's cool.
That's a good one. I'm gonna have to use that.
Yeah.
No,
Absolutely.
I recently read that article with her in it, which is very true. That those are part of the messages that a lot of women get,
Yeah.
and it's a mess,
It's that old school
and it keeps
mentality.
us stuck.
Yeah, like
Hmm.
like you were even saying about Andrew watching God, back when our parents and their parents, it was about, even if he beat you, as long as he came home or as long as he paid the bills, stay with him. There's no reason to leave because he knocked you.
Hmm.
Excuse
And that is a part of that was a part of the book as well. And she did try to leave,
me.
but that was it. And she literally sits there and thinks about what her grandmom taught her, and she starts to resent her grandmother.
Yeah.
Like, well, why would you tell me this? Because she gets married young, and then she's married most of her life, and she never gets to discover herself.
Right.
But in the end, it's like she finally has that revelation, but she has to go through all this trauma,
Yeah.
all this craziness just to get there. And it's like, girl, I don't gotta do all that.
Right.
So that's what I love it.
Exactly. Self discovery first, then get married.
Exactly. And grandma was like, no, go right into marriage and figure it out. And it doesn't work that way.
No, not at all. So who inspires you?
Mm, who inspired me? That's a good question. That's a good question. Um, I guess a lot of people inspired me. I guess my first thought was inspired me to like do what, like in what area, what way. That's the first thing I just thought of. Um, that's a good question. I just feel like it's a lot of people who've inspired me. I've had a lot of mentors along the journey, right? My mentors do, my coaches do. My mom. I don't know. Like I feel like all of these women collectively, as well as women that I don't know, such as a lot of, iconic Black women authors and figures. Like I remember my mom brought me this book when I was little, and it was called like 50 Black Women Who Will Change America. Like stuff like that really inspires me, because I actually have like a little video from when I was younger, and it's like me saying I'll be like the 51st Black woman to change the world. And I was little. Well, I wasn't that little, maybe like 12ish. I don't know, 11, 12. So those little things, those little books that my mom gave me, those experiences, those type of things always inspire me. Or like sitting and watching, Oprah having like a master class and sharing her journey, or watching Lynn Whitfield take you through her journey. Those are the things that inspire me, that are most meaningful for me. That remind me of my own greatness, and then what I do, and then how I can also support others in the journey.
If you could give one piece of advice
Mm-hmm.
someone gave to you, what would it be?
If I can get one piece of advice, oh, that's hard. Just because I have so many pieces. Just because I have so many pieces to give. I have one popping in my head, but I don't know if that's the one I would give. I guess I'll give this one, and this is one I guess I learned from my coach, and I say it all the time. So, a woman that is at peace with herself, um, no, a confident woman is a woman that's at peace with herself. But a powerful woman is a woman that's at peace with God. I think that probably is one of my absolute favorite quotes. Because we can obviously be in seasons where we like, okay, God, what you doing? But we also can be in that same place with our own selves. So, and I think as you continue on the journey, being at peace with yourself and God, right, is you and you, and then it's you and God. And I think a lot of times we focus on everybody else, like focus on, our our parents, our siblings, our partner, what we're doing at work, and all these other things. And we oftentimes neglect like me and me, and then me and God. Like that's normally like, okay, I'm gonna get to y'all later, or I'm gonna get to you on Sunday because that's when I go to church.
Right.
Not realizing that is an everyday experience of being with yourself and being God is something you should be doing daily, all the time. And a lot of things that you struggle with, if you actually put the time and pour the time into that, you wouldn't struggle with it as much. Right. But we don't know that all the time based on our upbringing, based on the messages we received about our spirituality, about, ourselves. We sometimes don't think we're deserving. We don't think we're worthy. So many women told me this week as I ran a challenge called Fill Your Cup that this is like the first time they ever felt comfortable to pray and really ask God for stuff, right? Because that is something, and I was like, wow. But they said this is what they learned growing up, right? That God is a certain way. I can't be asking him. Why would I ask him for stuff? And I'm like, well, why wait? Look, I'll ask for whatever I want. But that's also that's also me, and I guess what I've learned on my own journey, from my own, readings and coaches and things like that were different from what I may have learned growing up. So just breaking some of those old patterns will help you be at peace with yourself, but also to be at peace with God. And I want to be confident and powerful. So I try to do both. So that is the one, but I have like 1,000 more, but I'll just give one.
Absolutely.
For now.
So that brings me to another question. How do you protect your mental health? You give so much of yourself, you and your mom, y'all just out here, living your best life. You have students who count on you. Then you talk about relationships. So how do you take time for you and protect your mental health?
So one thing I encourage, this is also at the end of my book, is that every woman should have a daily confidence routine. So I know I have mine, which I like to do in the morning. So I literally wake up pouring into myself, connecting with God. I do affirmations. I listen to different meditations. I'm journaling. I'm writing. I'm lighting my candles, and I'm kind of doing my own thing. So that's how I get to protect my own mental health. If whenever I have something that I feel like is a bad day, or I feel like I'm triggered or things aren't going the way that I want, I have my, my go-to techniques that I utilize to help me. So for me, journaling has always been my thing because I love writing. So what I actually teach my clients, I have a method called the STOP method where I actually teach you how to jot down whatever it is that's coming up you, and then I teach women how to change the narrative. And I guess I call it restoring. You're changing the story. So you're like, oh, I just got triggered by this thing on social media. Okay, let's actually break that down and process what it is. And not just saying, oh, I don't like her because she's constantly posting, her and her husband, right? Which is something somebody would, like a client would say. Okay, well, let's actually process what that is. So, I really teach a lot of the things that I do myself with my clients. But if they don't like journaling, then I encourage them to talk it out if that's better. Some people, they like painting, you like dancing, whatever is like your thing. You just have to figure out how to apply the techniques so that you can get it out of you, right? Because when we suppress stuff, it's going to go it's sitting in here. Yeah. So it's moving into your chest. And then you're like, oh, I have breast cancer. Okay, right? When you have that type of dis-ease, then it can turn into disease and disorder, because those things have to sit somewhere, because it's even though it's emotional, it's mental. Your mind is always listening, right? So if you're pushing things down, like your creativity, your femininity, it's going to go to your womb space. I don't think we always think about that. I mean, a lot of people are getting more privy to that now, but it's all connected and tied together. So, you have to express. A lot of women, especially that come to me, are suppressing, and they're not expressing how they really feel, because you're not telling your partner how you really feel. You're not really communicating that. But oftentimes you ain't even telling yourself how you really feel, to be honest. Yeah. So I like to, again, take my mornings to be with myself and to talk to God and make sure we connected, because we be like this, right? And again, if I have my moments, I'm like, all right, Tara, let's bring it on in and have a conversation with yourself, because talking it out does work, right? That's why we have therapy, right? That's why I'm in school right now. I'm actually learning how that process works. And it's fascinating to that we're like this week I learned the science literally behind literally just talking to another person literally changes the narrative that you have in your mind that, oh, I'm unworthy, or my dad didn't like me, or, you know, that I'm unattractive. But once you start talking it out, your brain, right, it's called neuroplasticity. I know that's a lot. It's literally like rewiring and shaping it to that new story. And I was like, oh, okay, that's how. I mean, like I know that's how it works, but to see the science behind it and put together the art and science of it, like it really actually does work. But the ironic part that well, it's not ironic, but what I read also is that most people after their first counseling session, they never come back. And then when it gets to African Americans, 50% do not come back after one time, right? So you can't just, you know, pray to God once. You can't just journal one time. You can't just light your candle once and be like, oh my God, I'm healed. Like it doesn't work that way. It's a process that you have to take yourself through. So I'm really big on reminding people to stick with the journey and don't give up on it so easily.
That's
So
good stuff.
yes.
That's good stuff. It's funny that you say that. I know I've had several conversations on my channel about mental health, and our African Americans are just not counseling is just something that is not received well. You know, most people believe all I need
Stigma.
is my Jesus, all I need is this or whatever, and I'll be fine. No, you're not fine. You're toxic, and now you're having that toxicity.
Exactly, because you can love Jesus and also have a lot of issues. In fact, a lot of people do.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
but you're right. So that is something that we have to break.
Yeah. So, but it sounds like the younger generation is embracing that more and realizing that
Yes, which I love.
nothing right. There's nothing wrong with it. That it's helpful, healthy to do
Mhm.
so. So, yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to share with my gummies? Do you have any upcoming events? And also, please make sure you give contact information so that if my gummies would like to look into some of your programs, they are able to do so.
Okay, so thank you again for having me. You can find me on aliciafierce.com where you can download your free confidence ebook if you feel like that's an area you want to work on or someone in your life needs to work on. I also have a private Facebook group called the Unleash Your Fear Squad, which you're welcome to join. I do free challenges pretty much on a monthly basis, which are very life changing. So you get a feel for my style, but you also are able to shift and change as well as you do the work, as I mentioned, that I provide to you. And I'm all over social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and most people's favorite is on YouTube. So Fierce TV, you can go on there and you can find.
Awesome. So I have two questions that I like to ask all of my guests. The
Okay.
first one is, if money and
Okay.
time were limitless, what would you do?
If money and time were limitless, I would um that's a good question. I want to say that I would travel around the world and help women heal, evolve, and grow would probably be the top thing that I would say I would do. And I would travel, and I really love being around water. So I would like to be around water where I can read and write and live and speak and coach and do all of that together.
If someone asked about Tara, what would you want them to say?
No, I'm done. If somebody asks about me, I would want them to say that she is. Can I say what people already say? I guess. That she's actually down to earth. So I know my eyebrows are intimidating. And people are like, "Oh my God, she's gonna be so mean." I'm not. I am pretty assertive though. But that I'm down to earth. That I'm caring. I'm very perceptive, very insightful, so I can really read people. I would say from a mile away, but probably from a mile away. That's like a gift that I have, that I'm able to break things down really well, so that people are able to really understand concepts about themselves, about life, about love, about their businesses, but also other concepts as well. Obviously, you guys know I'm a teacher, so that is something I'm really good at. But I also think that people would say that I really loved empowering and I really love serving others. And that's a big part of my legacy. So I think that's what I would like to hear people say, but y'all can say what y'all want.
Right, because that
Y'all
doesn't
can say
change
what
your
y'all
narrative of
want
who you
because
really
the
are, right?
experience could be different, you know. But that's what I would like. Yeah.
Absolutely. But thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining. I know even through this social distancing, I know you keep a pretty busy schedule where you're attending
Mhm.
things and you are actually facilitating sessions and things of that nature. So
Yes.
I am very, very appreciative that you
Of
were able
course.
to stop on by and chat with the gummies.
Of course. Thank you. Hi, gummies. Or bye, gummies.
Gummies, thank you so
Mhm.
much for tuning in. Hopefully, something said today will encourage you and inspire you.
Yes.
I will drop all of her contact information in the comment section. So please feel free to check out her social media pages. Have a great day on purpose.